Well, we know President Joe Biden hit the ground running in the fight against COVID as more than 200 million of us were vaccinated within his first 100 days in office.
However, the president fell well short of his goal to get 70% of the country fully vaccinated by the 4th of July weekend. So where are we in this fight? Joining us from the Robert Woods Johnson Foundation this morning is Dr. Julie Morita, former commissioner of the Chicago Department of Public Health. And thanks for joining us again this morning. Good to see you. First question for you. Millions of people traveling for this 4th of July holiday weekend. So let's start with those who are fully vaccinated. Do they need to mask up this weekend?
Hi, Sylvia. Hi, Scott. It's great to join you again. I think it's critical to focus in on this vaccination versus unvaccinated status. People who are vaccinated really are well protected against the Delta variant as well as the other strains that are circulating in the United States. And the CDC has said that we really can be more comfortable taking off our masks, particularly outside and also in indoor settings. But there are some settings where masks still do make sense to use and are still required to use. So traveling by airlines, traveling by bus or by train, most of those settings masks are continued to be required. And so people, whether you're vaccinated or unvaccinated, should continue to do that. But for unvaccinated people really need to continue to keep their guard up, whether it's mask wearing, hand washing, social distancing, because there are still viruses that are circulating and people still remain at risk.
And doctor, I don't need to tell you, just within the past couple of weeks, there's been some really remarkable data to come out with regard to those who are not vaccinated and those who are hospitalized right now and those who are dying. Let's keep it with the Delta. How concerned are you that those who are going to just adamantly refuse to get their shots are going to be the ones that end up in the ICUs?
So the most data that we have about the Delta virus, really, the Delta strain, relate to what's happening in India and also in England, because there are high rates of disease transmission that are happening there because of the Delta strain. In addition, there's some evidence to suggest that it may cause more serious infections. And the people who are affected are the people who are unvaccinated. So it really is important. This should be great incentive and motivation for people who have been pausing to wait and see about the vaccine to go out there and get the vaccine. We are fortunate in the United States to have so much vaccine available. And so really, it's not likely it is in some of the other parts of the world where they don't have access to the vaccine. We need to take advantage of these vaccines that we have available.
Okay, let's get down to the bottom of this whole mask issue, because a lot of people are frustrated. They were being told once you get vaccinated, you don't have to wear any mask anymore. The CDC has been saying that. LA County this week now urging fully vaccinated people to wear their masks once again when gathering indoors. And then we have Dr. Arwady here in Chicago saying it's not necessarily the case here that really just applies, mask wearing anyway, when we are talking about places where there are not vaccination rates, high vaccination rates. So are there circumstances where you think people should personally be wearing masks right now?
I think it's critical to focus in on the levels of vaccine protection and also disease that are circulating when we consider the risks to someone to getting infected. So it's not the same. Even though we talk about having more than 50% of the adults vaccinated in the United States, that's at a national level. But when you look at smaller communities, you can see there's wide variation in terms of vaccine coverage as well as disease activity. So in Cook County, we have high rates of vaccine coverage. Over almost 60% of the population, adult population, is actually vaccinated. When you look at other counties in the state of Illinois, like Kankakee County, coverage levels are less than 50%, closer to 40%. And so there is this wide variation. So whether or not masks are recommended or required may depend upon how well vaccinated a community is and also how much disease is actually occurring in those communities. So there might be differences in terms of what's being recommended and what's being required.
You know, Doc, Sylvia and I were just talking earlier this week about hesitancy on our part when it comes to this recent revelation that some people might be asked to mix vaccines. I'm just wondering, out of curiosity, if you have any thoughts on that. I know this is a relatively new topic of conversation.
I think it's critical to look at the evidence and the science that are available related to vaccine. There are trials that are going on to look at whether you can combine different vaccines, whether if additional boosters are necessary. And at this point, we don't actually have the evidence to say what is most effective, what is necessary at this point. And so I'm excited to see that these trials are going on, and there's additional studies that are looking at how long immunity lasts with the usual course of vaccines, if additional boosters will be needed, and also if there's mixing is appropriate and helpful. So with time, I think we'll have more information.
Yeah, so much more to learn with this novel coronavirus. Dr. Julie Morita with the Robert Woods Johnson Foundation. Thanks so much for joining us this morning. We appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.
Good to see you.